A long-awaited reunion is always the most exciting and emotional, especially when old friends who have been separated for any reason are finally reunited. In such cases, even the king of the jungle can get emotional. This is wildlife, and in this episode, you'll see what happens when animals are reunited with their owners after a long time. Lionesses and their owner. Many people are sure that lions are not pets and not cute animals at all. However, the girl in this video proves us otherwise. One day she was walking in the wild and saw two lionesses not far from the road. They were obviously in some kind of discomfort, sick or injured. They couldn't move properly. I don't know what it was, but something made the girl contact them. She wasn't afraid to get close to the animals and took them with her. Probably the fact that at that time the lionesses were very small played a role, and the girl thought that it was not dangerous. In any case, she took them under her caring wing and took them to the shelter, where they were cured and their wounds were treated. In general, they were brought back to normal. Unfortunately, the girl couldn't visit them regularly. Moreover, she'd not seen her friends for more than 7 years. The fact is that she urgently had to return to her homeland for business. However, she didn't forget about those she'd saved. She came to visit them, not even thinking that they'd recognize her. But that's what the reaction from the animals was to this encountering. They rushed to their rescuer, stood on their hind legs, and started hugging her, kissing her, and rubbing themselves against her. Isn't that cute? Even though they haven't seen each other for over 7 years, the animals hadn't forgotten the one who had given them the ticket to a normal life. It's amazing. A friend's voice. How long do you think chimpanzees usually live? Actually, their life expectancy is usually 35 to 40 years, but the individual in this video was 60 years old at the time of filming. The primate's name was Mama, and she was clearly sick. The poor thing was shaking, eating nothing, drinking nothing, and completely unwilling to interact with anyone until a longtime friend came to her enclosure. The man named Ian was a professor when Mama was a young ape. He studied chimpanzees' abilities with her, gave her gifts, and protected her from unscrupulous employees. In general, he was like a big brother to her. That's why the primate gave a shrill and joyful cry as soon as she saw her old friend. After that, the chimpanzee started stroking the man's head. This indicated that she was happy to see him. Unfortunately, the primate did not become healthier and died a few days after this touching reunion. Donkey. A long time ago, in a remote mountainous region, a man named Maxim lived. He was in charge of the household, and his favorite donkey named Thunder helped him. These two were really inseparable. They always hung out together, went for walks, had breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everyone knew that where there was Maxim, there was Thunder. However, a series of unpleasant news forced the man to return to the city. He left his companion under the supervision of his neighbor, Alexander. 6 months flew by extremely quickly. Only after such a long period of time was Maxim able to return to his home. At that moment, his heart beat much harder. He was looking forward to seeing his old friend. What if Thunder had forgotten him? Noticing that the donkey was not with Alexander at the moment, Maxim went to their favorite place where they often sat together and looked at the stars. Arriving at this very hilltop, the man gazed into the distance, watching with excitement the shimmering hues of the sun's rays penetrating through the dense forest. With each passing second, the memories of all the adventures they had together came flooding back into his mind. And then, in the distance, Maxim saw a silhouette that looked like his favorite Thunder. The donkey came out of the bushes and went straight to his favorite friend. They hugged a few times, kissed, and never parted again. Horses. Horses are another incredibly intelligent and kind animal that never forget their owners, especially those with whom they've come a long way. A horse named Happy has achieved great success in equestrian sport. He and his owner took gold every year, but one day the winning streak came to an end. Happy was injured and couldn't continue to perform in professional sports. While the girl participated in various tournaments and withdrew her applications, completed contracts, and so on, the faithful horse lived in the same place and looked impatiently toward the fence, hoping that the next person he would see would be his owner. Thoughts are material. I think everyone knows that. So it wasn't 2 months later that the girl returned. Happy saw her from dozens of feet away and immediately rushed towards her, forgetting about his injuries. Their reunion was incredibly spectacular and heartwarming. "Owner, is that you?" You know, after these reunions featuring horses and donkeys, I thought to myself, what if the owner changes in their appearance, and it would be a long time since their last meeting? Would the animal recognize its friend in that case? Well, why guess? Just watch this video. The man sitting on the bench became seriously ill, and while he was in the hospital, he lost several tens of pounds. All this time, his faithful dog was frolicking in a country house. It made no sense to take it to a stuffy city. And as soon as the man returned home, this is what happened. First, the dog barked several times at the man. It was very strange and incomprehensible to the dog. Despite this, the dog gradually got closer and closer to him. It had to smell him. The woman helped the dog not to be afraid of the strange guest and let it come even closer so that the dog could smell it. The four-legged creature was so surprised when it smelled in this odor all the most dear and lightest that was in its life. It immediately realized who was sitting in front of it. It was the very man who had taken it in. The dog wagged its tail, ran, began to caress with joy. In general, its happiness was unbounded. This case does not have a particularly interesting story. It's extremely simple, clear, and at the same time interesting. It shows a young farm girl returning to her native land after several months of absence. The main inhabitant of her house, which she'd not seen all this time and was longing for, is this lamb. It was born literally in her hands, so this animal is of special value to the girl and causes inexpressible emotions. Although, judging by the way the little one reacts to the girl, the lamb also has her in its heart. These endearments after the meeting are worthy of special attention. The lamb poked its head through a small hole in the fence and enjoyed being stroked by its owner. Aw, how lovely. The Return of Jorge. And this is another video that can easily get you emotional. The case was in Georgia. In 2015, a man named Giorgi lost his dog, Jorge, and had been patrolling the city since then to no avail. More than 3 years passed, but the man's hope never stopped fading. Neither he nor Jorge forgot about each other and searched for each other with all their might. And then, one day, the man received a call from the staff of the Opera Theater in Tbilisi. The person informed him that a dog, very similar to the dog that Giorgi was looking for, often walks near the opera building. The man immediately went to the right place and took a camera with him. When he approached the theater, he really found a dog near the tree, which did not pay any attention to passers-by. Just as how he did it before, the man called the pet by his name, and then a miracle happened. As soon as the dog heard the name, he immediately stood up and wagged his tail. It was as touching as it could possibly be. Goose happiness. What, you thought only large animals, those with equally large brains, could be happy to be reunited with their owners? Well, it's nothing like that. For example, geese are no less romantic and loving creatures, which will never remain calm if their longtime acquaintance appears in front of them. In this case, the goose encountered the girl who took care of it all its chickhood. Several years passed since their last meeting, but neither she nor the goose had forgotten each other. The goose immediately ran towards its friend with outstretched wings. Its feet were pointing in different directions, as if it were ready to embrace her as much as possible. This happy moment will definitely remain in their memory forever. These touching moments can make you cry, but don't hurry to put away your handkerchief, because next I'll show you some moments when people saved animals' lives. Let's start the episode with the clumsy bear. Somehow it got its head stuck in a can. Probably it wanted to drink from it or something. In any case, there was no way the bear could remove the can on its own, so it came out on the side of the road to people. The indifferent drivers made a concerted effort to help the bear get rid of the trap, but as soon as it was over, the drivers ran back to their cars. They did all right. Who knows, maybe the bear would hug them to death trying to thank them. But there was no need for this, and everyone was satisfied. And here is another victim of thirst. Only this time there were no cans on the head. This king cobra was literally dying of thirst. It had not been drinking for so long that it decided to take an unusual step. It decided to crawl up to people and ask them for help. The locals were scared at first, but then decided to help the reptile, realizing that the animal was not going to cause harm. One man took the cobra by the tail, and the other carefully gave it water from a bottle. After that, the cobra was taken to a special animal care facility, where it ended up in good hands. Sometimes you have to help snakes, and sometimes you have to help creatures which suffer from snakes themselves. In this case, that creature was a little deer. The fawn was wandering along the road in Thailand and came across a hungry boa constrictor, which immediately attacked it and began to wrap its deadly rings around it. Luckily for the fawn, a tourist was nearby. He got out of the car and frightened the snake with a long branch. It soon loosened its grip and left the fawn alone. Of course, it's a kind of interference in the wildlife, but was it possible to leave the fawn in trouble? The next animal of the episode is also a baby. It's time for a baby fox. The adult fox ran to the people and led them to a hole. When the people came to it, it was clear. A baby fox had fallen into it. It had fallen right into a drainage pipe and was stuck tightly. So much so that the rescue operation dragged on for hours. Finally, one of the rescuers managed to get the animal out of the bottom by grabbing its tail. For the first few seconds, the pup looked very frightened. The rescuers washed and dried the animal and let it go. In this footage, we have a predatory creature again, but it's much more dangerous than a baby fox. This is a real adult polar bear with a tin can in its mouth. In fact, that's the problem the bear came to humans with. The animal couldn't get rid of it on its own. From the outside, it might seem that there's nothing very serious and that the tin can can be removed in no time, but it's not so. It turned out that the bear had been carrying the can in its mouth for days and couldn't eat or drink. People had to perform the entire operation, literally. The veterinarians flew out to the scene and tranquilized and immobilized the bear. It was the only way they were able to remove the tin can and save the animal. The bear's tongue was cut badly, but the vet said such wounds heal quickly. In this footage, we see the thrill seekers near a rapid mountain river. From the first seconds of the video, it looks like the man who got into the water decided to demonstrate some cool stunt for the video. But in fact, he rushed to save a little moose. The current was rapidly carrying it away. The man was in time. He got in the way of the animal, caught it, and carried it to the shore. A little later, and the calf would have been carried away much further. Most likely, it would not have survived. Not only people suffer from cataclysms, but also animals. Here we see just such a victim of a cataclysm. A dog was covered with rocks and sand after a powerful landslide. It was buried up to its neck, so it couldn't get out by itself. Fortunately, the hero of this story, Soner, dug the dog up with his bare hands and a shovel and pulled it to a safe place. But that wasn't the end of the story. The stray dog continued to howl even after it was rescued. Soner and his colleague, who was behind the camera, thought it was for a reason. Soner returned to the burrow and continued digging. After a few minutes of diligent digging, the man stumbled upon a tiny body which fur was covered with dirt. It was that dog's puppy. But it wasn't alone either. Soner continued digging until he rescued all the stray dog's puppies. In a total of 2 hours of digging, the man rescued 8 puppies. This is worthy of respect. Here comes another excavation. This time there was no landslide. The animal fell into a narrow crevice. And now a man fumbles for the animal, starts pulling it by its paws, and a muzzle shows up on the surface. Does everyone recognize what it is? Yes, it's a kangaroo. Apparently, the Australian jumper miscalculated its trajectory and accidentally fell into the crevice. Anyway, it's saved now. The marsupial looked gratefully at its rescuer and then jumped away on its business. We have a similar situation here. Again, we see a deep crevice, and again we see an animal that got stuck in it. This time, a lamb fell victim to its own inattentiveness. A caring teenager volunteered to save it. The boy did everything correctly. He tied the leg of the lamb with a belt and pulled the animal out fairly quickly. In general, everything was almost like in the story with the kangaroo. Only the lamb was not so clever. After a couple of seconds, it jumped and got into the crevice again. Either it can't learn from its mistakes or it just didn't want to get out of the crevice. Anyway, it was fun. Not only land creatures need help, but also water creatures, even the most dangerous ones. In 2017, Ben Johnson, a dive instructor, was diving off the Cayman Islands and came across a shark. At first, Ben was frightened, but he soon noticed a large knife sticking out of the shark's head. It was as if the shark had asked the diver for help. It whirled around, swam closer to him, and turned around, showing him the knife. Ben couldn't leave the animal. He had to help the shark. Ben carefully took the knife out of the animal's head, and then it swam away. According to Ben himself, he saw the same shark again a few days later, and the wound had healed completely by then. Now let's go to the beach, along which a man in an orange t-shirt is running. He's not taking a morning jog or something. He's running to save an animal that's in trouble. This animal is another shark. Mind you, it's big enough. The poor guy washed ashore and the man pulls it even further, but only to get the hook out of the predator's body. Now the shark is saved and free. All that remains is to bring it back into the water, which is what the hero in the orange t-shirt does. Do you know what a mouflon is? If you don't, this is a wild sheep that have very beautiful twisted horns. But beauty is not always good. For example, this mouflon got its horns caught in a tree in the woods. Because of the shape of the horns, there was no way it could free itself from this captivity. It's like handcuffing yourself to a radiator. But luckily for the herbivore, the man was running nearby that day. At first, the runner tried to bend or break the tree to free the animal, but that was unsuccessful. Then he simply began pulling the mouflon by its horns, gradually pulling it away from the tree. After about a minute, the mouflon was rescued. It's no secret that whales are often washed ashore. As a rule, they die after that because they can't return to the water on their own. Sometimes people with special equipment help them, but this time no equipment was needed. Dozens of people organized a rescue operation and brought back the whale to the ocean after it had been thrown into the shallow water. I suggest you just take a little look at this cool footage. Okay, whales being washed ashore are nothing new, but what about stingrays? Yeah, it turns out that these flat fish sometimes end up on shore too and have to be rescued. In this footage, we see such a rescue. Because of the shape of its body, the stingray couldn't return to the water on its own, so vacationers came to its rescue. It's hard to believe from the outside, but stingrays can weigh hundreds of kilograms, and some species, for example, manta rays, even weigh several tons. So it's extremely difficult to drag such a carcass back into the water. It took a few minutes for the men to return the stingray back to the water. It soon broke away from the sand and swam away after a couple of minutes. By the first few seconds of the video, it may seem like we're watching some kind of ice swimming competition. But in fact, we're looking at a hero who rushed into an icy river in which a dog turned out to be. Its faithful congener was standing nearby, but of course there was nothing it could do to help, unlike the brave man who got close to the dog by breaking the thin ice. The rescue operation was successful. They swam back together and were soon ashore. How nice that the world still has such caring and courageous heroes. Everyone knows that cats are mischievous animals that can climb anywhere. This furball somehow managed to climb to the top of the telephone pole. However, it didn't think about how it was going to get back down. Besides, it's almost physically impossible to do it. The cat's claws are grown in such a way that they only hold the animal tightly when it climbs up. Anyway, the cat meowed pitifully and called for help, and soon a rescuer with a belay came up to it. It carefully removed the cat from the top and secured it to the pole so that the cat could descend on its own. By propping and leading the cat, the man eventually got the animal to the bottom and rescued it. Bear. Taking a selfie with a bear sounds like a pretty good achievement, doesn't it? Except that only a handful of people around the world got it. Here's one of those lucky ones. 3 female hikers decided to take a walk on a hiking trail in one of Mexico's national reserves when suddenly a black bear appeared out of the thicket and approached one of them. It stood on its hind legs, pressed against the girl, and began sniffing her head. The frightened hikers tried to scare the bear, but it was so carried away with the girl that it paid no attention to them. Then the hiker took out her phone and took some selfies with the bear. Seemed the bear needed that, because after the photo shoot, the predator returned to the forest, and the girls hurried to get away from the place of the encountering with the animal, just in case it wouldn't like the pictures and wanted a reshoot. It's hard to imagine what emotion those hikers felt when they took pictures with the bear. But the next protagonist of the episode, photographer Drew Hammond, clearly felt only fear and shock. He came to Alaska to take some photos of bears. He set up camp and watched the animals in a place where salmon lay eggs. Suddenly, a large predator came to him. The bear seemed to have come to pose for the camera on purpose. It didn't attack Drew and generally behaved rather sluggishly, yawned a little, sat, stared at the river, and then left, losing interest in what was happening. To say that Drew was surprised is an understatement. It's not every day that bears get so close to people, and they're not always so calm around people. Elk. This elk, on the other hand, was far from as calm as that bear. The photographer was taking pictures in the Chattahoochee Valley in the United States when suddenly the horned animal approached him. The photographer wasn't disturbing anyone, so it wasn't even clear why the elk suddenly decided to approach him. And it would be fine if it was just that, but the elk surprised the photographer with his aggressive behavior, starting to butt the man. At first, the photographer tried to look as unarmed and safe as possible, but when it became clear that the elk was not going to give up, the man rose to his feet to appear more formidable and larger. Fortunately, rangers soon arrived in the valley and helped scare the beast away. Deer. Being a wildlife photographer is not easy. You have to track animals for hours to get good shots. Finding animals can be difficult, especially if they're standing right behind you. That's exactly what happened to this photographer in the suburbs of London. Roger, an older photographer, saw a deer standing right behind the guy. Apparently, it was the guy who wanted to photograph it and had probably been standing there for hours, not even realizing how close the goal was. Roger decided to film the scene and then shared the footage with the photographer. As for me, these shots are much cooler and more unusual than just pictures of deer in nature. Impala. Did you know that impalas are natural-born gymnasts and acrobats? Not only can these herbivorous animals run away from predators across Africa, but also perform spectacular stunts. One of them surprised a photographer named Neil who went to a national park in Namibia to take a series of pictures. A young impala impressed the photographer with an unexpected acrobatic stunt. It did a handstand perfectly. According to the photographer, the impala started doing tricks after it had quenched its thirst at the waterhole. Apparently, more photographers should make ambushes near African rivers and lakes to get more of these unbelievable shots. Puffins. Taking beautiful pictures of birds is an even more difficult task than taking pictures of land animals, especially if we're talking about the puffins, which are known for their fearfulness. But this photographer got lucky. He was surprised at how eagerly the puffins made contact. Some birds came right up to the photographer and some even jumped on it as if to check if he was a real human or some kind of scarecrow. Possible, though, that the puffins were just looking for something to feed on. In any case, the man got some really great footage. That's all, guys. Which animal's behavior impressed you the most? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and see you later.